The movie begins in a green field with Alana, an environmental scientist, taking pictures of the area. Taking off her glasses, she looks around with a concerned expression and says that all of this should be here. After she puts her glasses back on and continues taking pictures, the camera zooms out and we see a large patch of green land in the North Pole where the rest of the land is covered by thick snow. The scene changes and we're brought back to the city to a radio astronomy station where Zane and Calvin were monitoring the computers for signals. After shifting the antennas of Wolf 336, the two men start conversing about Zane and suddenly get a phone call from his girlfriend Shar about not coming home. While promising her that he would be there in a few minutes, the computers in the lab started going crazy as they informed them that they were receiving a signal. Dropping the handle of the phone, the two men focus on the signal, trying to pinpoint what it means. Zane and Calvin go through the 3 phases to confirm the signal is real, but after phase 2, the signal fades. After waiting for the signal all night and all morning, the two men report to their supervisor Gordy at NASA, but he dismisses their discovery, telling them that they needed more evidence than just 42 seconds of sounds to take them seriously. When Zane kept pushing the idea, Gordy took him to his office and told him that they were making budget cuts and fires him. Zane is then taken aback by the sudden decision, especially when he had thought that he brought a great discovery for the facility. Gordy apologizes for what was happening to Zane, telling him that he wished things could be different. Upset by the strange turn of events, Zane walks out of the office, and meanwhile, Gordy takes the recording Zane had made of the signal and just decides to break it. Zane then goes home and is confronted by his girlfriend while they stand outside their balcony due to the increasing heat. Zane and Shar argue about their relationship and the trust that they have with each other, which infuriates both of them. In a different part of the world, Alana was trying to get satellite images of a certain area, but is unable to because the machines were not functional. When she calls NASA with the problem, they tell her that the satellites are down and that they were unwilling to give her a date about when they will be back online again. Back in the city, Zane calls other stations who had offered him a job before and tries to follow up, but finds that they've changed their minds about him. One of these prospects explains that Gordy had informed them that he was making up signals to keep his job, and hearing this, Zane is enraged and drives down to the facility to speak to Gordy. When he arrives, his entry pass has expired, so he's forced to drive through the fence to reach the main facility. He then hurries down to one of the lecture halls and tries to speak to Gordy, who was in the audience. When he asks why he was doing things and requests the return of his tapes, Gordy carelessly tells him that he has no idea what Zane was talking about. As security drags him out, Zane loudly asks why Gordy is doing this, unable to understand the man's intentions. After he's thrown out of the facility, Zane finds a phone booth and calls Calvin, who's at the office, and informs him that some men have come to the office to clear out their files. Calvin informs Zane that the men had told him the signal they thought was from a star came from a defense satellite, which was why their work must be confiscated. Zane is skeptical about this explanation and tells Calvin that they were lying because the object that emitted the signal moved like a star instead of a satellite. Zane begs Calvin not to tell the men about the backup that they've kept on the signal, but Calvin was scared of getting in trouble, so he confesses everything. Angry, Zane abandons the phone booth and heads to Shar's workplace, frustrated about everything. The two then have a fight about his increasing paranoia and the fact that she was offered a job in San Diego. Annoyed by his constant badgering, Shar tells him to go home and that she will speak to him soon. Upset by this interaction, Zane begins to take action into his own hands and uses his new job as a dish repairman to build a large connection of dishes to acquire the signal that he once did at his old job. He then builds himself a home lab where he would be able to do his research. One night, while he was working, he hears sounds coming from outside and goes to check it out. Hanging upside down from his porch, he finds Kiki, the next door boy, who was apparently spying on him. After helping him down, Kiki goes into Zane's lab and is curious about his work, asking consistent questions. Although annoyed, Zane entertains the boy's curiosity by answering all of them. The following day, Kiki returns to Zane's house having found his research fascinating. While keeping an eye on the monitors, the notice spikes just like Zane and Calvin did in their office a few days ago, but suddenly, Mexican music becomes entangled in the signal, cutting it off. Zane tries to understand why the same signal is coming from Earth and concludes that they must be communicating. Deciding to talk to his friend Calvin, he goes over to his house and finds the police there, who tell him that Calvin has died from carbon monoxide poisoning. Zane was really shocked by the incident and decides to visit Mexico to find the station that was broadcasting the signal that clashed with the one that he was tracking. He heads to the station but finds that it was burnt to the ground. Disappointed with his luck, Zane goes back to his hotel and takes a bath. While relaxing and catching up with his voicemails, Zane almost dies when a bathtub from the room above crashes into him, but he manages to escape just in time and sees a man who's been following him since the airport. Following the man, he corners him and asks him who he is, and suddenly a few people come out of the house next door, distracting Zane. By the time he looked back, he's surprised to find that the man has reached the roof. The following day, he goes out in hopes of finding another station and happens upon Alana being harassed by the city soldiers. When he tries to help her, they're both put into custody until they can go through her equipment. A few minutes later, a woman comes into the room and apologizes for ruining Alana's gear, who gets upset by the news. As the two women argue, Zane was sure that he saw Gordy amongst the police searching the equipment and urges Alana to let the situation go. Back in the city, Gordy approaches the same man who had assassinated Calvin and tells them that they need to handle the problem Zane was creating. Going to his house wearing a disguise of gardeners, they unleash a machine that completely swallows all of Zane's equipment, leaving his attic empty. Back in Mexico, Zane and Alana head to town and discuss her work over drinks. She explains the rapid change in temperature in the world and shows him the pictures that she took in the Arctic. She tells him that in the future, they might expect the polar ice capsules to melt if the temperature increase continues. Zane remembers the lectures that he heard about terraforming and mentions it to Alana, telling her that he would tell her more once he discusses it with an expert, and walks Alana to her room. And although she asks him to stay if he wants, Zane declines and goes back to his hotel, telling her to be careful. Saying her goodbyes, Alana gets ready for bed, unaware that someone had unleashed scorpions in her room, and she then gets into bed only to be startled by an unbearable pain on her foot coming from the scorpion's venom. At his hotel, Zane calls Shar and asks her about a company that he feels is responsible for the conspiracy, as she's an investment banker. Shar tells him that the company had other companies set up all over the world with more than 20 branches, which shocks Zane. Locating one of them in Mexico, Zane sneaks in through the gates in hopes of getting a better look. While scouting the place, he suddenly feels the ground shaking intensely and sees a giant antenna emerging from the ground, emitting a strong signal. As he continues to watch, he sees his taxi driver arrive and come in through the gates, feeling comfortable as if he worked there. Zane follows the man inside and finds that the place is some kind of factory. Disguising himself as one of the factory workers, Zane tries to blend in and looks around the place, and after entering an elevator that covers the entire place, he's shocked to see a vast expanse of out-of-this-world technology. He finally reaches the lower levels, where he comes across an alien and is shocked to see it transform into a human being with the help of their technology. Running away in fear, he accidentally falls into the space that they use for terraforming. While watching in awe, he's accidentally spotted by one of the aliens who sounds the alarm. Shocked at being discovered, Zane runs for his life, but notices that his face had been displayed on every screen and all the aliens are looking for him. Realizing that this was his only chance to escape, he uses the machine that allows the aliens to transform into humans and changes his appearance. When he enters the elevator, he runs into his taxi driver, who's suspicious at the way his hands have started melting. When the alien asks questions, Zane pushes it out of the elevator to avoid detection before crawling out to the surface. As he hurries out, Zane begins to feel dizzy, the change unable to last on his human body. Stumbling around, he manages to escape the facility, running into the fountain to wash the skin off his body. Once he was back to himself, he gets into his car and begins to drive, but he accidentally hits Gordy's look-alike who was standing in his way. Seeing the rest of the aliens coming after him, Zane starts his car again and drives off. The following morning, Zane is called into the police station with false accusations about a drunk man killing a security guard of the facility. He's adamant about his innocence and demands to see the body that they were accusing him of, and leaving the room and locking it behind him, the police captain begins to speak with his officers outside, who bring him a body that Zane supposedly hit. While he watches from the window, they uncover the body and he's shocked to see Alana dead on the ground. Realizing that he needs to escape before they return, Zane uses the window to get out of the room and rushes onto a bus which brings him back to the US. Once he returns, he goes to NASA to speak to Gordy, who is startled to see him. He confronts Gordy about what he is and threatens to shoot him, which would expose his real identity. Pointing a gun through his trenchcoat pocket, he takes Gordy aside and tells him that he wants to speak to him in private. Zane then pushes him to an area where he had set up cameras and gets him to talk about the factories and what they're doing on Earth. Once he gets the information that he needs, Zane gets the camera and runs away, leaving the unconcerned Gordy behind. He hurries to his house and finds Kiki, telling him about his discovery in case he's ever murdered. The two then go to his house to see the tape, but they find his whole house is empty. When he thinks about his next move, Shaw arrives and tells him that the detectives had come to her house, telling her that Zane was facing manslaughter charges. Although she doesn't believe what he tells her about the aliens, Shaw offers to help him and they head to the radio station where he used to work along with Kiki. While he was getting ready to transmit, he sees the alien outside the place and suspects Shaw has called them. After fighting one of them off, he decides to give Shaw one last chance and tells her to come with him. Giving Kiki specific instructions, he hurries out to the other room where he can adjust the antennas, but he gives Kiki the signal and the child unlocks the door for Gordy and allows him to take the tape, revealing that he was one of the aliens. Shocked at finding out his little friend had deceived him, Zane becomes adamant about getting himself and Shaw out. After another attack by Gordy and his men, he manages to freeze them using nitrogen gas, but accidentally unleashes the alien machine that sucks in everything. Zane and Shaw hurry out of the station as the device pulls in everything in its path, breaking the large antenna apart. The two survive the crash by holding on tight to the railings of the antenna, and at the end of the movie, we see the broadcasting station receiving interference and the conversation between Zane and Gordy being displayed, informing the entire world.